What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Recently, or somewhat recently I guess, Riot has been trying to innovate the meta and create these meta-breaking characters in order to try and mix things up and make some fun, fresh, and unique characters. Examples of this include Mordekaiser, who was kind of this melee carry designed for the bottom lane, and Kindred, who was an AD carry specifically designed for the jungle. And there's a lot of room for more champions like that to be brought into the game, who maybe try to completely break the meta or are just totally different in their own right. Every time Riot makes a new champion, they want it to fit some type of role or capture some type of gameplay aspect that wasn't existing in the game previously. This way the new champion adds some sort of experience or maybe some type of gameplay that didn't exist in the game already. And so, let's get started. The first type of champion that might exist one day is a support that enables a melee bruiser bottom lane. Something like a support that you might want to take bot lane with, like a Norelia or maybe a Nasus or a Darius or something. A champion that would allow you to take a bruiser or a tank who typically would have no business ever being bot lane. This could potentially be a support champion that maybe provides an ally with a gap closer or with an increase in range in a reliable way. Bruisers typically suck bottom lane because they get kited or they're too vulnerable to the harass and reliable kiting mechanics of an AD carry and support duo. So this type of champion would probably need some form of sustain, maybe like healing or shielding, as well as also having the gap closer effect or like an auto attack range extender or something, but it would be really awesome and a unique role of a character for League of Legends. And it has a lot of potential to create some super interesting lane dynamics and bring a lot to the bottom lane that just wasn't there before, as well as providing an awesome option for a team composition. It might be a bit tough to balance with healthy gameplay, but it would be an awesome champion for sure. Another type of champion that could exist one day is perhaps a mana-less AD carry. So an AD carry that uses maybe energy or perhaps a heat system like Rumble, or maybe some other type of resource like Renekton, or maybe just no resource at all like Garen or Riven. At the moment there's no AD carry that exists that doesn't use mana. I guess you have the exception of Kennen actually, but he's a really weird AD carry pick, and he certainly was not designed for the AD carry role. So I'd like to see a mana-less champion that is actually designed to be an AD carry. It would be an interesting take on the AD carry role, and would probably be a lot harder to balance, and would really have to be balanced with the idea that they'll always be facing mana users in lane, but it's a concept that hasn't been tested too much so far, and Kennen does kind of show that there's room for an AD carry that uses a different resource to mana. Another champion that could exist one day is an assassin support. Funny thing is that in one of his earlier designs, Bard was actually intended to be an assassin support. Instead of being the roaming support that he is now, he was a support champion that had stealth, and a lot of mind games revolved around that during the laning phase. This concept of a support that is an assassin is a pretty interesting one to me because it's a lot different from the typical support champions. But as an assassin down at the bot lane, you would probably face a squishy AD carry and sometimes even a squishy support. Right now, assassins don't work in the bot lane because they rely too heavily on just getting gold. They rely on getting CS, but an assassin that maybe doesn't rely on getting CS and as a trade-off probably would scale poorly with items or maybe require a nearby ally to work could be a lot of fun to play. The next type of champion that could maybe exist one day is a burst mage jungler. We have junglers like Nidalee and Diana who are kind of like these AP bruisers, but I'm thinking more along the lines of a jungler that has a kit, or better yet a playstyle, similar to someone like Annie or Syndra. Burst mages are some of my personal favorite types of champions in the game to play, and they create this really exciting, all-in aspect when you try to burst someone down. That's high risk, but also very high reward. Maybe this seems like wonky design for a jungler, but it's an exciting take on the AP mage playstyle that could make for an awesome champion in the jungle. Although it would likely require a lot of tuning and tweaks to make sense for the jungle role. Especially in terms of jungle clear, this is probably one of the less likely champions to exist. It'd have to have like some portion of the kit dedicated to jungling, with some portion dedicated to burst damage, so it's possible that they might not fit that well together on paper. Although, I'm confident that Riot can typically make any kind of idea work for a champion somehow. The next concept for a champion that has potential to exist is this idea of a split pushing support. Banner of Command and Zeroth Portal have proved that this idea of a split pusher without actually needing to have the ability to dive or deal damage to turrets in any way is one that's quite successful. and I'd love to see that kind of concept in a champion, or as a part of a champion's kit. It probably makes the most sense on a support, since it's not the most useful combat aspect to have in a kit, but it's incredibly useful for macro play and strategy. Split pushing is a role that is typically reserved for bruisers and assassin-esque champions, because they have the power to dive and solo kill someone who might try to come to defend their push. But a support with split pushing power similar to how the items do it could be a really unique take on the split pushing concept, and potentially create an interesting gameplay dynamic. Although it would have to be a lot different and probably a lot better than what Zeroth Portal and Banner of Command do. Otherwise, it's not really bringing that much to the table, but this idea of a support that has split pushing power maybe on the side, or maybe as one of their ultimates or something if it's powerful, is one that could create for some interesting games. Another type of champion that could exist one day is a mana-less support. Similar to the AD carry, you could have a support that uses energy, uses a different resource system, or maybe just uses no resource system at all. At the moment, there isn't a support that uses something other than mana. And again, similar to with the AD carry, I don't really think Kenan's support fits that concept, since he really was not intended to be a support. And I'd love to see a support that doesn't use mana, that is designed for the support role, be added into the game. Bot laners typically always use mana, and while that's for good reason, mainly balance issues, that doesn't mean that you can't have a champion with the idea that they'll always be facing someone with mana in mind. Mid laners and top laners have other resource systems and lane against champions with mana all the time, and although it's a difficult thing to balance those mana-less champions for, it's doable. And champions aren't made on the concept of whether or not they'll be balanced. They're made on the idea of them bringing some new element of gameplay that didn't exist previously, and them being fun to play, and a mana-less support would do just that. Sure, it would be tough to balance and require a lot of tuning, but it's not something that's completely impossible by any means at all, and a mana-less support could be an awesome new take on the support role. And for our next type of champion that has potential to exist, we have a solo laner, either top or mid, that is designed to benefit a lot from jungling, and more importantly, counter jungling. So like a solo laner that is fully intended to take smite while still heading into the top or mid lane. Solo invading as a laner is one of the more fun aspects that I personally enjoy when it comes to playing mid lane and especially top lane. We've seen solo laners take smite a lot in the past when the jungle items were overpowered, but how about a champion that totally embraces that concept? One that pretty much forces you to take smite and find a way to make use of it through jungling and invading your opponent's jungle during the laning phase. It'd be a super unique take on a solo laner that takes this concept of solo laners taking smite and totally just runs away with it and pushes it to the max. Maybe they get like some kind of buffs for counter jungling, or maybe just like some kind of super meaningful benefit, while also wanting to do it frequently, requiring the use of smite. Maybe the buffs or benefit is greater when counter jungling instead of taking your own jungle. It would create this really cool aspect of trying to invade the enemy jungler that would be pretty exciting, since solo invading is typically a risky thing to do, but it could offer a good reward and a fair trade-off. And it would also create a strategy that included other members of your team and members of your opponent's team to help you counter jungle and invade the opponent, or maybe stop your invade. That would bring a really unique style of gameplay to the laning phase that could be really interesting to play both as, with, and against. And that just about wraps up the list. Which one of these would you like to see added into the game as maybe a rework or in a future champion? Leave a comment, subscribe if you want, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.